my grandmother would regale us with all these different stories of my dad growing up. He had lots of cousins, and one in particular was, I think, around his age. And there was one day when my grandmother made a chocolate cake and put it on the table, I guess, to cool. And my dad and his cousin decided to have a taste. And the next time she looked at the cake, there were pokes of little fingers all over it. There was no way to really do anything with the cake. It was lost. But yeah, as a kid, hearing that story, that was funny, and I really just wanted to recreate that. You know, I probably did, but not exactly in the same poke marks. It was more from the side, because then it can really get at the cream. Poetry for me is a way to express the unexpressible. Being able to put into words those things that in regular sentences are maybe too abstract or incomprehensible to some. It is a way in as much as it is a way out. Poetry can really get to the heart of the matter very fast. I think for me, it's kind of saved me in a way, in a time when I felt really dark and alone, and felt like it was reaching a hand and calling me. My name is Rinat De Picciotto. I'm a communication designer and a transformational coach. I'm also a writer and a poet. And I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I probably started writing poetry as a kid, very badly. And yeah, it's something that I loved reading. There was something really resonant when I would pick up a book of poetry and just kind of open it up and see the poem, and would have to read them out loud in order to be able to really connect to the words and try to understand. I don't think that I really connected to poetry in class necessarily, but you know, except for maybe a few moments of like, oh, I think I understand what they mean by that. But there was definitely, you know, afterwards when there was more maturity to be able to really get into the words and understand. It's more than just the structure. It's the, you know, what is actually being communicated in a way that I think day-to-day language isn't able to really capture. Nature is a big part. And I, you know, live in the city, so it's difficult sometimes to actually be in nature. But there's nature all around, and it's, you know, we are nature, and so being able to really reflect on what is happening on the outside can give some insight as to what is happening on the inside. And then being able to gain inspiration from conversations from other poets, what's happening in the world, how I'm impacted, what's happening in the worlds of other people. There's a whole richness to draw from. My first job. I think I was 16 and I was picking grapes in Israel. It was a really cool experience. I used to live in a very small town in Israel before I moved to Canada. And there were lots of agricultural settlements all around. And so my first job was, I think it was during the summer, 2 summers that I did in a row. And it was lovely to be outside picking grapes and being with a lot of other people who were there either as volunteers or as students who were trying to make some pocket money. I opened my hands wide, spreading the fingers, feeling the air brush against the skin. I start to fashion an imaginary orb with my hands, round, slightly misshapen, the size of a beach ball. I feel myself anchored to the earth and tethered to the sky, see the echoes of the past and future standing in the now. I am calling back to myself all of my abandoned, neglected, and discarded pieces of my younger years. Their return is a reclamation. The ball becomes smaller, tighter. I bring it closer to my core, up through the chest, close to the mouth, and swallow it whole. I welcome in all my broken parts, breathing through the pain of them becoming a part of me once more. There was the day that my dad was in the ICU and we found out that he needed to come off life support because he wasn't going to survive. And my mom had just had very long surgery because she had both her legs broken, and so they had to put them together. And it was an incredibly long day, and I came home after sort of having to move through that day, and a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, texted me to say that she was available to connect. And at first I wasn't going to talk to her, and then I just decided I really needed somebody. And so I called her, and I think the most beautiful of moments was when we cried together for an hour on the phone. And it was just what I needed at that time.
First of all, thank you for sharing this. Do you need any tea or water or anything?
Yeah, some tea. To that line from Leonard Cohen's poem, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. And it feels like grief has this ability to break open things. And so I felt really broken. And for me, that specific loss, and especially because it came so suddenly and unexpectedly, because of the circumstances of having to then support my mother because of seeing the loss of her ability to do things and independence and way of life that she had before, my own way of life, it just kind of stripped everything down. And suddenly I was staring at what was there. And on a personality level, I guess that's when I sort of realized, gosh, I don't like what I see. There were other people around that were really there for support, whether it was emotional or physical. And poetry was there. I found my way in through writing, and writing not necessarily anything good or profound or anything that I really thought that I was going to share. It was just a way to really express some of this feeling, some of the emotion, knowing that there was also something, a chance to not just process, but also really transform. There was a recognition that there was a gift in the moment, and it didn't come right away, but it was there. And so throughout the first year after the accident, I really delved into the process of writing and allowing myself to really feel whatever it is that I was feeling and express it through my voice and my writing. I don't know if this is the earliest memory, but maybe they asked the neighbor to watch us over or something like that whenever they would go out somewhere. But I remember pretending to fall asleep when they would arrive. So I would wait until they arrive. And then I would fall asleep or pretend to fall asleep just so that he could pick me up in his arms and carry me to my bed. My mother was in the hospital for about 3 months, and so there was a time when she was in the hospital and we didn't know exactly, how
how long, when, if all of those questions were lingering. And so all of us were with her right after it happened for a couple of weeks, every day at the hospital, and just being with her and letting her know how important it was that she was still there. Because I think especially her suffering, her injuries, and then also recognizing that suddenly she was a widow. That was such an abrupt transition. And so yes, there was a lot of love and support being given just by being there, presence. And then as things improved and we became roommates, just being able to support the physical as well as the emotional by the everyday things that we do together. And we speak through food a lot of the time, and so being able to make food together and creating the space to really be with one another and getting to know the person that we've become as grown-ups is, that was such a big part of this rediscovery and the support as well, because it's a different relationship. Especially at the beginning when we moved in together, I sort of noticed her tendency of always telling me what to do. Like, Mom, I'm a grown up. I've lived on my own for quite a while. I know how to do things. And so, that's been part of the process of recognizing that we're just not quite the same people that we were when I lived under my parents' roof as a teenager and a young adult. And, there's certain life experience that I've gained in the years in between. And there are things that I learned about her, and some of the things that maybe I saw but not so clearly as a teenager and an early adult were maybe some of the dependencies, the ways that she was dependent on my dad, and now that he was gone, suddenly these things sort of transferred to me. And, it may feel unkind to say, but it's also part of their generation. Their generation was that gender roles were very much a thing. It wasn't as equal. And so for her, it was just for granted, something that I would never do, but for her in her time, just was the way that it went. And so for her to be dependent on my dad for paperwork and banking and all of these other things. So, that's maybe the not so positive things. But what I also discovered was like this insanely funny person that I never got to see before. And I don't know why, because again, she raised me as the same person, but I think she was maybe a different person herself. And so her sense of humor that she doesn't even recognize herself, because she's just being funny by who she is. She's not telling jokes. She's just being funny by who she is. I had this moment of recognition. It was actually a few months into the leave of absence, where I was still just kind of taking care of myself and while taking care of my mother. And it was like this, like, oh, I have needs, which may seem very simple, but at that point, it was sort of like this new discovery of, gosh, I don't think I was really paying attention to what it is that I need, because it was taking care of everybody else's needs first. And I still think that that recognition of this here, this me, really needs my love and attention, because it's from this person. You know, if I feel full, if my cup is full, then I can give to others and not feel like I'm giving from nothing. There is a sense of giving with joy, of being able to help because I've helped myself, of being able to allow other people to process because I've allowed myself to process, which is something that I've been doing ever since. And it's just so important. And I can tell whenever it is that I don't do that, because, you know, that's a very hard habit to break. I become really snappy and annoyed, and don't have a lot of patience to deal with my mom or anybody else who comes in my way and demands something. And that's when I recognize, oh no, it's because I haven't actually given myself time, care, compassion. I've just been going without actually paying attention. So constantly bringing it back to, how am I feeling? How am I doing today? What am I giving gratitude for? How can I move forward despite the circumstances? How do I help my mom in her situation without overgiving? And that's when I started changing a few things, and also looking at myself through a lens of compassion, and understanding that just because I don't like certain parts doesn't mean that I need to continue to behave in a certain way, or that I need to take myself down a notch just because they're not likable. There are probably some very good reasons to my behavior, even if I don't like it. So just treating myself with a lot of compassion.
I'm strong and I'm sensitive. Both are true. It is not a paradox. To be there for other people, I must first take care of myself. I've learned I'm not alone. I have dear friends who love and respect me and are eager to support when needed. Doing everything on my own is not brave. I need others, and that's a good thing. We all do. I have also learned that there is help available on the other side if we only ask for it. It may come in ways we don't expect, but it's there. think the most important thing is to live fully, to be in this experience, this human experience, and to let myself move through it with love and grace and joy. To really live and allow the experiences to be felt deeply and connect with others who are also in this experience with me.